if you are very empathic, if you are highly sensitive, you are taking in more data than the average person. You are sensing more things. I've used this analogy before, but it's very similar to an autistic child that their senses are very heightened, and so people laughing or clapping or big crowds just really hurts their ears and is overwhelming. And so they've got those special headphones that are noise canceling that help them function. And I love that you're here too, Wendy. That's so cool. So like for us on an emotional level, we are very similar to that. We are taking in more data than the average person. And I can't remember if I've explained this before, but if you want more information on like introversion, or it could apply to empaths, but I just really related to it, Susan Cain's book, Quiet. So Susan Cain, you can actually look her up on YouTube for a talk on the subject as she was promoting her book from a few years back. And it's really good as well. But in the book, she talks about how there's something that's related to introversion, extroversion, but is parallel to it. So it sometimes lines up, but doesn't always line up. And that is reactivity. So, and it has to do with how we're stimulated. So there's like people that are highly stimulated and people that are understimulated. So, and everyone could be on a scale, just like introversion, extroversion, it's on a scale. And so the way they discovered this was they had all of these infants, and they would take an infant and place it like in a car seat type of deal inside of a fairly dark room where they could like show the baby one thing at a time. And it might be a TV show, but also might be a puppet or a rattle or a mirror or different things. And so some of the babies were very reactive, highly reactive. So whenever there was a noise or a something bright or a light or something surprising, then the highly reactive babies would kick and wave their arms and make sounds and respond to it. And then the low reactive babies would just kind of stare and just weren't surprised by anything, weren't overwhelmed by anything, weren't responsive to anything, just kind of stared at it. So what was super interesting is that most of the high reactive babies that responded to everything by kicking and flailing and making cooing sounds or yelling, those babies grew up to be introverts. And the babies that were low responsive, that just kind of stared, grew up to be extroverts. And the reason is that in the brain, the babies that were high reactive and were actually introverted were the ones that were, it was like their sensory dials were turned way up. So just everyday normal life was super stimulating. So they didn't have to do anything extra to be stimulated or overstimulated. Just everyday life was that way for them. And so they tended to be more reclusive, have alone time away from people, have quieter, darker environments, and stuff like that. And then the low reactive people that were mostly became extroverts, those people felt like the dials were turned way down on their sensory sensitivity. And they were the ones that sought out big crowds and loud noises and bright lights and thrilling activities and all the stuff that would finally give them some of the sensory stimulation that they have been lacking. And so these are the people that are the daredevils that thrive in extreme missions for the military, that enjoy really big crowds and loud concerts and stimulating bright lights and all that stuff. So it's just that the chemical levels in their brain are different. And so they need more excitement and stimulation to feel alive. And so most of us, I believe, are the ones that, sensory deprivation tank would be nice sometimes. So most of us that are in this group and have experienced our particular brand of health challenges, we are taking in so much data and we're very sensitive and aware of so many things that really holds us back. So this is how I want to reframe our health struggles. If you've got more than your fair share of health struggles and you feel tired all the time and fatigued all the time and it's challenging to gain strength and you feel like you're undisciplined and disorganized and all this stuff, not only have you been overstimulated and oversensitive all of your life, and so it's just like it makes sense that you are worn down because of all the things that you're juggling. Like everyday life is monumental for you, but also because you're in that situation, and people from the outside don't understand and they think that you're not doing enough, then you have pushed yourself so hard just to try to keep up with everyone else who doesn't have all of these overwhelming sensory stimulation that you have. So not only are you already overwhelmed, you're already pushing yourself more than other people are pushing themselves because it takes more work for you to kind of function at the same capacity. And then you become a target because of your kind and empathic and caring ways. You naturally attract people that want that kind of feedback and keep expecting you to do more and more and more and more because you're so accommodating and caring and probably not great with boundaries, at least for most of your life, and all of that stuff. So, and not great at prioritizing yourself, which is part of setting boundaries. And so if you keep saying yes, then they keep giving you more. So all those things have just like you've had more on your plate than you should have had. And you have more on your plate than all the people that you're comparing yourself to and saying it shouldn't be this hard. I should be more disciplined. I should be better at this or that or the other thing. And so it's so important to have compassion and understanding for yourself, to slow down, to be kind, to be gentle, because this is part of how you function. Like, you need to have alone time, and you need to have processing time, and you need to be able to turn down the lights and isolate yourself when you need to, and just for basic processing of your day and your life. And I'm learning to practice this more and balance my life more, because there's a lot of things I want to do, and I do love people, and I think that's one of the biggest conceptions of introverts is that they're antisocial. Being antisocial or having social anxiety is a completely separate thing from introversion. Introversion just means that you don't get energy from being around people. You lose energy from being around people, but it doesn't mean you don't love being around people. So, so you just have to like budget your people time. So yeah, so I feel like for a lot of us, there are, when we think about it, and I was just thinking about it this morning a little bit, when you stop and think about all that you have endured in your life and you have suffered that wasn't necessary because of your personality and because of your makeup and your sensitivity and your empathy, and then the way people took advantage of that to cause trauma, it can be heartbreaking, and there can be a lot of grief for the lost years, lost decades. But I think that there can also be an understanding of the power that we have in our unique position, because we are able to understand people on a really deep level. We're able to understand loss and grief, and we're able to weep with those who weep, and celebrate with those who have accomplished great things. And the world needs that. It would be a very cold and vicious place if it weren't for people like us. And so as we get stronger, as we learn to practice our boundaries and to prioritize ourselves, which feels like narcissism in the beginning, because we're coming from one extreme to center, but we're getting closer to narcissism. And so anything closer to narcissism feels scary. But we have to prioritize ourselves, just even from the standpoint that logically, no one else can be more responsible for me than me. No one else can be more responsible for you than you. And so even though we have spent most of our lives being overly responsible for everyone else in our lives, we have to take back our sovereignty, our power, reprioritize to make sure that we are actually showing up for us and taking our power back, taking responsibility for ourselves in every area, for stewarding our energy. Like, no one else can say no for you when you get too many invites and there's too many things that you want to do. Like, you have to be able to look at your own desires and your own priorities and say, okay, so even though I want to do all of these things, these top 3 things are the most important. And so I am going to have to say no to these other 4 things that I would like to do, and that I wish that I could, say yes to for other people's sake, to take care of them and make them feel okay. But you have to take care of you. And I'm like thinking of some examples in my own life recently where I need to do this as well. And just even the last couple of days realizing, wow, I've got too many activities that are scheduled in a row, and I need to be able to spread that out. And so even though it might be disappointing for some other people, or challenging to rearrange my schedule in a certain way, I really need to, because the activities that I have in a row are just too much. So, and I'm the only one. I'm the adult in my life. I have to be the one to make that change. And it's amazing. I do enjoy partnering with other people that are more on the narcissistic end of the scale. Doesn't mean they're narcissists. Just every personality kind of like, some people find it easier to prioritize themselves, and some people find it easier to prioritize everyone else but themselves. So I have some good friends that are good people that are more on the narcissistic end of things. They have no problem saying, "Oh, I can't make it tonight," and sometimes giving a reason and sometimes not giving a reason. That's great. So I can kind of learn from their example and prioritize myself in the same way and not feel bad about it in the same way that they don't feel bad about it. They don't feel burdened with everyone else's experience and what everyone else is going to do as a result of the decision they made. So it's good to have that every once in a while as a mirror and a reflection